What strange habits have you picked up from your line of work? Before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to the Vancher channel. Also, please share your thoughts on this video in the comments. Let's get started. Story 1. On my first morning as an apprentice plumber, I was sent into a loft to turn off a valve. The loft was full of cobwebs, and they got all in my long hair. Went and bought a cap in my lunch break. I wore a cap every day at work since. 9 years of wearing a cap later, I simply do not feel like I'm a plumber without my hat. I'll have to put it on just to change a tap washer at home. Edit to add by popular request, a picture of the plumbing hat. TLDR, I can't plumb without my plumbing hat. Story 2. Three-way communication. I'm a senior reactor operator, and just about everything that gets said in the control room goes like this. Me. Raise reactor power with flow to maintain the power profile. Me. Understand. Raise reactor power with flow to maintain the power profile. Me. That's correct. That's fine for work. But then I'm at home. Wife. I'm going to the store to pick up some groceries. Me. Understand you are going to the store to pick up groceries. Wife then looks at me and goes, there's something very, very wrong with you. Answer. I work with trains and 90 of our comms is via radio. The other 10 is by phone, but even then protocol is mandatory because calls are recorded. Sometimes I get briefly confused as to why the customer service rep doesn't understand phonetic alphabet or sounds frustrated when I repeat back to confirm. Also, saying roger that or affirmative in regular conversation seems to get some weird looks from people you've just met too. Story 3. Worked in a preschool, found myself asking others if they washed their hands after they left the bathroom. Story 4. Work around horses. I catch myself touching people's backs when I walk behind them so they don't get spooked and kick me. Story 5. I'm a maintenance electrician. Anytime I go anywhere, I always catch myself looking at the lighting to see how many globes have blown. Story 6. I work in childcare. Obviously, it's important to know how many kids you have at any given time. So at work, I'm constantly head counting. It's kind of a weird skills to have, but having done it literally thousands of times now, I can do it very efficiently, even with large groups of non-stationary people. Because I do this almost unconsciously at work, I constantly find myself doing it in the real world, such as when sitting having a coffee in a cafe or at a party. It's actually come in handy more than a few times, because if you've ever been with a large group of friends, it's easy not to notice if someone goes missing. Not when I'm around. Story 7. In the theater, it's not unusual to call out noise before you purposefully make a loud noise to let people know you aren't hurt. I do that at home and in my current job in IT broadcast engineering all the time. Another theater thing is to say thank you when someone gives a group of people a message, like 5 minutes to places. So sometimes I'll say thank you when people say things. Story 8. Locking my computer every time I get up from my desk at home, even though there's nobody else around. Story 9. Delivery driver here. I don't trust other drivers at all, ever, period. I don't make enough money to cover an accident. I see horrible drivers every day. If I see you coming a few blocks away with your turn signal on, and I could get safely ahead of you logically, I won't do it till you start your turn because you're a moron and that signal is accidental. Answer. Yep, same here, delivering pizza. I don't trust that another driver is actually turning until I see them start the turn. Also fudge you to all the drivers who put their turn signal on a yard before they start turning. I assume pedestrians are going to throw themselves in front of my car because often they just walk into traffic with their phone glued to their face. I particularly don't trust taxi drivers, the most unpredictable drivers on the road, more dangerous than tipsy drivers, to be honest, because of their tendency to just do random shoots suddenly, particularly U-turns in busy traffic on 4-lane streets. As a result, I often drive with double the space that is properly required between me and the guy in front. I signal my turns religiously and usually at the point where it can't cause any confusion, and I instinctively avoid cabs whenever I encounter them. Story 10. Restaurant manager. I have to stop myself from thanking people walking into leaving businesses that aren't my restaurant. Quite embarrassing on the rare occasions I don't catch myself. But I guess I just look super friendly or fudge in between. Answer. How about saying behind you every time you walk behind a random stranger? That always makes me feel creepy. I used to work in a restaurant with a flight of steps that only had room for one server with a tray. As a courtesy, we would yell going up down before traversal. The habit stuck, and even now, several years later, I find myself yelling, going up down in public when I'm holding something in both hands. Edit, speed. Story 11. My manufacturing job is really safety conscious. Gotta wear gloves for everything. Nitrile gloves while I'm cleaning. Cut-resistant gloves for basically anything else. Now, when I'm working around the house, I don't feel right without a pair of gloves. Story 12. I work on a psychiatric unit and I've picked up a few tendencies. Most notably, whenever I hear a loud, sudden noise, I immediately jump into fight or flight mode. While this may sound like a normal behavior, I am extremely distressed by this. I must look like a startled rodent quickly scanning the area for danger. I've been put in headlocks, punched in the face, choked, and given a mild concussion in the 2 years I've worked there. It can get intense. Even if this comment instantly gets buried, I had to comment on this. All the stress I feel at work is really taking a toll on me, and I don't know how much more I can take. Story 13. Molecular biologist. I never smell anything directly anymore. I always waft the smell towards my nose with my hand. I always label every food and/or beverage container with the date it was open. I never leave anything uncapped for any length of time. The lid is always immediately replaced, even if I'm using it 10 seconds later. I've got great sterile technique, but now I've become a super neurotic cook. Story 14. Horticulturist at a botanical garden. I can't go to someone's house without wanting to prune and pull weeds. Story 15. After working in the restaurant business throughout high school and college, there was a period of time I caught myself saying corner anytime I went around a corner in a crowded place. Story 16. Computer engineer working as software dev, pressing controls all the time. No, I do not want to save this web page. Story 17. Back when I worked retail, some dude asked me the time when I was on vacation. I looked at my watch, told him, and then when he thanked me, I thanked him for coming in and told him to have a nice day. Edit. I also feel compelled to mention this awkward moment is one of the things my brain jumps to when I can't sleep at night. Answer. This reminds me about when I worked at a Moe's Southwest Grill. You're required to shout a welcome to Moe's at everyone that walks in. I would be in line at the gas station either before or after work and would come so close to yelling that at the other gas station patrons. But I was in line with a coworker I was taking home that night, and as we waited to check out, some girl walked in, and he didn't hold back one bit. So I guess I'm trying to say, it could be a lot worse, lol. Story 18. I'm a cook. I always sneeze while bending over as deep as I can, so I don't contaminate any dishes food. I also have powerful screaming sneezes. The combination of these gives me the most theatrical sneezes in the world. Story 19. I work with mentally disabled adults, and sometimes I forget I can't talk to normal people like they're 5. Answer. I used to work with developmentally disabled adults, and I got into the habit of standing sideways to them while trying to calm them down. You appear less threatening than if you're facing them dead on, present a smaller target should they rush you, and can shift your weight to your rear foot for stability if you can't get out of the way in time. Now I catch myself speaking to people from sideways stance whenever I'm uncomfortable or don't want to talk to them. Story 20. Fisheries biologist. I can't eat seafood without dissecting what I'm eating. I remove ear bones from fish and check the intimacy of crustaceans. Story 21. I was a casino dealer. I would never give or take cash directly from people's hands. I have also said no more bets to several people in shops, on buses, etc. I have even said it in my sleep. Edit. Corrected typos. Story 22. I work at a high-end wine and liquor store. I smell every beverage now before I drink it, including water. Also, when I grab an item at a store, I sometimes pull the next one forward to make it look nice on the shelf. Story 23. When I'm driving and someone does something stupid, I accelerate to catch up to them and reach to turn my lights and sirens on. Then I realize I'm not in my cop car. My friends make fun of me at bars and public places because I'm always scanning and looking around at people. On more than one occasion, I've opened the car door for my girlfriend, guided her into the car with my hand, and said, "Watch your head." It's hard to get in a car with handcuffs on. I always guide the person in and make sure they don't slam their head. Story 24. Telling people my name and saying I'm from help desk when I call them. Call my mom and say, "Hi, this is CCVH from help desk." Call the pet store. "Hi, Brittany, this is CCC reply from help desk." Never not awkward. Story 25. I'm a substitute teacher, have my license for middle secondary bio, and also work nights at a liquor store. If I ask someone to help me with something or explain something, I always end it with, "Does that make sense?" And then I apologize because outside of a learning environment, it can sound condescending. I also call everyone bud or friend. I also face items at stores that I am shopping at. Story 26. I'm a correctional officer, so at work I say about 1,000 cuss words. In the free world, I forget. Some people take offense to that. Story 27. Saying thank you in response to someone who says thank you to me. Me, holding door open for someone. Person, thank you. Me, thank you. Story 28. Working in a kitchen for a few years, I've made a habit of saying things like behind, sharp, corner, or hot. So now I pretty much look and sound like some sort of full-time safety man. Story 29. I am a martial arts instructor. Occasionally, when I'm not thinking, I bow when I walk in and out of buildings and sometimes to people when I meet or thank them. I'm sure I look freaky. Edit to add, we bow coming into the building to symbolize leaving all negativity at the door. On the way out, we turn in the doorway, facing back into the dojang and bow to symbolize our appreciation. Bowing out of Kohl's is much more awkward when I cause a traffic jam. FML, I teach a Korean-based mixed martial arts. Edit 2, wow. I got gold for a job where I get paid to punch other people's children. Nice, thank you. Story 30. Knife hand. To this day, I am unable to actually point at anything with just my index finger. Use my whole hand or just no. Story 31. TV reporter. I sometimes ask complete strangers who I'm not interviewing, i.e., people at the grocery store or park, pointed, overly personal questions about their feelings or events that have happened in their lives. While inappropriate, I can't think of a time when someone hasn't given me a genuine answer. Story 32. I barely notice small cuts anymore. Source, I work in an automotive glass factory. Broken glass everywhere. Story 33. Clothing retail. Every time I shop, no mess. Nothing hits the floor, and I fold any stacks I needed to sift through. I try to make it look like I wasn't even there. Eye contact and smiling with people who get close to me, as if I'm about to check on their shopping experience. Then the, do you work here? No, sorry. Story 34. Sniffing wood. I make wood for cooking with, and when you are processing the different species, I cannot help but sniff the log after they have been split. My favorite is either Douglas fir, which we use to make kindling, smells like citrus, almost like an orange, or cherry. When you get a good bit of cherry and pop it open, wow, very deep, sweet cherry notes. So yeah, I sniff wood. Story 35. Too quiet and everything seems to be okay means telephony is down and people can't call you to report a severity 1 issue. Story 36. I can hear the chit machine printing even when it isn't, even when it's not around. I look to check it even in my own kitchen. My coworker says he hears it in his dreams, has nightmares about it, wakes up sweaty, no more chits, he cries. Story 37. I work in front of house hospitality, and you'll find me at friends' houses washing dishes when extremely hungover after a party. Story 38. Guessing whether someone is over 60. I work at a movie theater, and the seniors very often forget to ask for a senior ticket until they pay. Story 39. Whenever I see dogs in public, I immediately go, "Hi, doggy," and begin to pet them. I work at a pet store. Story 40. I'm an architect. Every time I enter into a public space or building, I can't help but think about the layout or the structure or the general environment inside the building. Most often, it's just me getting annoyed at the layout or the design of a space. Like a library that has lots of echo, or a university building that has far too much circulation space compared to actual useful space. I just generally get annoyed at about 80 of the buildings I encounter, including my own flat, which has ventilation problems and cold bridges where the balcony meets the wall. Also, because I tend to use a lot of programs like Revit, Rhino, and AutoCAD, my automatic reaction when I make a mistake in real life is Ctrl-Z. Story 41. I'm a theatrical lighting and sound designer, occasionally sets too, and I can't go to any kind of venue without analyzing their system, fixtures, and rigging. This goes from bars to other theaters to churches. If I'm watching a performance, a particularly special effect will wow me but distract me from the show as my mind tries to figure it out. Story 42. I work in theater. Someone will usually call out call times, 20 till house, 5 till places, and everyone replies, "Thank you," or "Thank you." Now, though, whenever someone tells me the time, I immediately say, "Thank you, time." Story 43. I'm school admin in charge of discipline. I look to see who's working in the kitchen before I order fast food. Typically, I only eat it while on a road trip. I don't trust employees to not mess with my food. When out in public, I am constantly aware of who is around me. Since I never know who's a parent, influential community member, or a student, I don't drink in public. I've done it 2 times only, and both times people who've seen me call school board members to complain, even though it is on my personal time. When speaking about things that happen at work, I never use names. I use very vague language. Edit, adding I'm American. I used to coach a HS rugby team and toured quite a bit. While on tour, beer used to be served at the socials. I found the aversion to drinking seems to be an American thing. Story 44. In college, working at a pizza place right now, I forget that casual use of hard substances at work isn't normal on a regular basis. Oh, also people use knives wrong like all the time. Also, what people think makes a restaurant dirty and what's actually nasty are 2 very different things. Story 45. When reading the name Jesus, it's now automatically assigned the Hispanic pronunciation in my head, regardless of context. Story 46. No longer matching tones with someone in an argument. Saying, let's see here, while trying to have someone wait for me to finish something. Accidentally answering my phone and saying, thank you for calling. I mean, God fudge darn. Hello. What do you want? I don't much like talking on the phone when I'm not at work. Answer, once held 2 jobs. One was at a fire department, the other in the service industry. Worked midnights at the service job. On slow days, I just sit in the office and nap. Woke up to the phone ringing at 3 a.m. Answered, MH Fire and Rescue. What is your emergency? Guy on the other end says, fire rescue, huh? Me, still half asleep, said yes and asked what the emergency was again. My boss at the service job said the emergency was he needed the regional manager's number for the neighboring region for our company. Luckily, it was my boss that called and got a chuckle out of it because he knew I worked 2 full-time jobs. Not 5 minutes later, my regional manager called for my assistant boss number. I was awake for that call and answered the phone in the corporate appropriate way. Story 47. As a teacher, I can't help but critique the school procedures and pedagogical practices I see on TV. I'd say 90% of the drama that happens in schools on TV is because of a complete and total lack of proper procedures. Seriously, why are there never any adults in the lunchrooms? Who leaves a classroom unattended? Why is the football coach letting students go to the bus alone? Story 48. I generally don't believe that grandparents die, printers explode, and email servers crash all on the due dates of assignments. Story 49. Thanks for the comments, guys. Ironically, I posted this at work and haven't been able to look at any of them until now. I work in a kitchen, and the idea came to me because I sometimes find myself knocking on doors when not necessary to do so, because it is custom in a busy kitchen to do this to avoid collisions with others. Another sometimes embarrassing habit is that I will sometimes say behind when trying to pass someone in public, such as in grocery store aisles, as opposed to the standard excuse me. This one has gotten me some confused looks and again arises from custom in a busy kitchen. Story 50. I work with zip codes, and so I constantly find myself seeing random numbers like 681 and automatically think, Omaha. It's kind of ridiculous that I associate all numbers with state zip codes now. Story 51. I'm an air traffic controller. Phraseology is important. When I misunderstand someone, I say again. When I make a mistake ordering food, I'll say, correction. Story 52. I worked in a pizza shop in high school. Where I worked, it was required to wear aprons, so we got in the habit of wiping our hands on them. While cooking at home, I started just wiping shoot on my pants, which is fine until you wear khakis for a party and your mom yells at you in front of everybody. Story 53. I swear a lot more often, in and out of work. My boss is a versy, casual, vulgar guy, and it's rubbed off on me. Story 54. The majority of people who I work with are Spanish women with thick accents. I now often sound like I can't speak English correctly outside of work. Story 55. I live with my best friend, who is not techie at all. He loves console gaming, and I'm an avid PC gamer who works in IT. His NAT type on Xbox was set to strict, and whenever I opened the ports, it would go back to strict. He shrugged it off as an oh well scenario, whereas I mapped out all my troubleshooting, watched numerous videos emerge from my man cave 4 hours later, asking him to check his NAT type, and it freaking worked. I was doing my victory dance all happy, and he was like, you actually spent 4 hours on that? Safe to say, techies don't get enough credit even from their best friends. Story 56. I'm in analytical chemistry. We have to invert shake everything we analyze to make sure everything is mixed. I find myself doing this with everything at home. I only had to do this once with a soda to realize it had gone too far. Story 57. I groom dogs, and I've picked up a few weird habits. 1, I have dog hair all over my clothes, and it doesn't really bug me. People hair freaks me out. 2, I judge the crap out of people if they bring their dog with really long nails, more than 20 external parasites. For every 1 flea you see, there's more than 10 times that on the dog. So if I easily see 20, it means your dog is infested. Or a lot of matted hair, aka dreadlocks, not like corded, but neglected. Bearishry. I run up to people and ask if their dog is a certain breed or ask what breed it is. My boyfriend is usually very embarrassed to take me out. 4, I judge haircuts from a distance and gauge how much it would cost to cut a dog's hair. 5, I can talk about dogs all day, but I don't know what to do with myself. When I meet a cat person, I just don't get them. That's about it. Hope my job hasn't made me too much of a D-bag. Story 58. Engineering. I must find the most efficient method of doing something. We'll spend 50 minutes of free time trying to make 3-second tasks take 1 second. Edit, spelling, not the strong suit of an engineer. Story 59. I'm a dog groomer. Anytime I meet a dog, I'm looking at its toenails to see if they need trimmed. Also, checking out the haircut. Also, whenever I cut my boyfriend's hair, I repeatedly do things that I do to dogs. Manually move his head around, grab onto his chin to steady his face, and blow the hair out of his eyes as I go XD. Story 60. Both from military and law enforcement training, I find myself pieing around corners in my daily life, as well as blading myself away from people when talking to them. Story 61. For a couple years, I was installing cameras and security devices. I have caught myself looking at the security cameras and stuff to see how well they are set up. I can tell the difference from a fake dome and a functioning one. This can get you in trouble because those that are stealing are the ones that are doing the same thing. Story 62. I'm a firefighter. Anytime I go into a building of any sorts, I'm noting everything. I'll note exits and whether or not there's a suppression system. If a means of egress may get blocked, it'll note other ways to get out like windows or a wall. We'll have at least 3 or 4 different plans that I can use in case shoot hits the fan. I'll also check smoke alarms or CO detectors if I'm in someone's house. I also tend to size people up and probe for info in respect to who may able to assist me the best in helping others in case of an emergency situation. All done in the first few minutes. Story 63. Although in Australia we use the English spelling for most words, I spell color without a U by default because that's how the CSS property spells it. Story 64. Former master mechanic. I judge the ever-loving shoot out of people based on their cars. I've been told I have a creepy ability to tell someone their wildlife story after spending 10 minutes with their car. Not necessarily what they drive, that is part of it, but mostly how they treat it and how they drive it. I can tell how you drive by looking at things. If there is a huge disparity in brake lining wear from front to rear, they're probably impulsive impatient. If there is a bunch of random trash and bullshit in it, that person lacks discipline. If someone has an expensive car they don't maintain, they are more concerned about image and the trappings of wealth than anything. These are literally some of the worst human beings I've met in my life. People that drive manuals at any price point that have clean interiors always have their lives together. I could go on for hours. Cars are such a fascinating expression of people. Edit, I'm getting tons of messages from people asking me to psychoanalyze them over the internet. I actually need to be there in person. There are hundreds of small details that matter. You telling me that your car is clean is bogus. Your idea of clean may in fact be a health hazard. Story 65. Working in IT has caused an automatic reaction to avert my gaze whenever I see someone typing in a password or PIN code. Story 66. I'm a working musician. I can tell the key of the seatbelt beep in people's cars and the BPM, roughly, of their turn signal clicker. I also cringe every time I hear bad notes in commercial jingles. The worst offenders are the cheapo used car company ones, normally on after midnight, varied locally, that sound like they're recorded in garages with some truly awful and seemingly always female singer, probably the owner's sister or something. Story 67. Almost 10 years teaching preschool, constantly having to bite back teacher voice when children misbehave in public and their parents ignore it. At the zoo, I firmly explained to a child why not to bang on the glass. Then the mother who had been playing Candy Crush walks up and gives me this look like I'm a pedo and drags her son away. Sorry for trying to teach your child respect of animals, since you have elected not to, meanie. Answer. I don't even have a kid of my own yet, but dang, why society has changed like that can't be a good thing in my eyes. When I was a kid, kids were kids and adults were adults. And if you were an adult, you had the socially acceptable power to say no or don't to any kid, assuming they did something wrong without getting any shoot back from their parents. And that was just how things were. And yes, I am actually writing this while wearing slippers, even though I'm only in my 30s. Edit and S. Story 68. Not as fascinating as everybody else's, but mine is embroideries. I used to work for an embroidery company that made a lot of sports logos, among other things, names, animals, designs. If you could think it, we could probably embroider it. These were not your grandma's handcrafted on a pillow. Embroideries to make these logos, we used heavy gun-sounding machinery. After I left, I had an eye for dissecting an embroidery logo from across a room. But I had a tendency to stick my hand in people's shirts. I always asked first. And check out the backing of the design. Did the makers mess it up? Were there any loose ends? Did they run out of thread in one area and switch the color to a slightly similar color midway, etc.? I love having this knowledge. And I also learned how to digitize, make a logo on a computer. One day I'd love my own machine to make designs. I loved bringing people's ideas to life or even just making their name on a purse. The look on their face was always priceless, just a wow face every time made it worthwhile. Not mine's, but my husband's. Breaking a box is a part. He works for a box-making company, can tell you everything about boxes cardboard. We can't walk into a store without him gasping, yes, he gasped, about a cardboard box, especially if his company made it. He can tell you the type of cardboard, if the ink was pressured correctly, if the ink is crooked, the angles, etc. Just everything you never wanted to know about cardboard, he knows will gladly tell you. Story 69. I used to work at a steel mill. I feel wrong not stopping at railroad tracks. Also, I actually call the railroad if there's a problem with a crossing. I don't care if the lights have been flashing for 15 minutes and there's no train. I'm not going through. Story 70. Counting how many fans are spinning on the roof of a building that I pass all the time. I can't help it, even though I haven't worked there in over a decade. The spinning fans indicate the heat load on the large liquid-cooled computers in the data center. There are 10 7-foot diameter fans that spin in pairs at either low or high speed. If I saw 8 fans at high speed as I drove into work, I would know that I had to consider shutting down 1 or 2 computers to avoid a system failure due to overheating. This could happen if outside temps were over 90 F. The fans are facing an interstate highway that I drive on all the time. Even as I tell myself, don't look, I still count them in my peripheral vision. Story 71. I work in a nuclear plant. If I'm in a store or mall that has an outer door, then an inner door, I sometimes catch myself waiting for the first door to close before opening the second. Our secondary containment building has airlocks for entry. One door locks while the other is open. Story 72. Well, I'm a programmer, so now I only communicate in stale wit. I've got a bad case of the Mondays. Oh yeah, you working hard or hardly working? I need a vacation from my vacation. Story 73. I worked in a grocery store for 5 years, and so whenever I go through a checkout line or talk to a cashier, I say, "Hi, how are you doing today?" Just out of habit. Oh, and for a while afterwards, I would usually stop and listen whenever an intercom went off. Story 74. Welder here. Whenever I'm in a place that smells like a welding shop or I hear any sort of grinder, my eyes sort of get itchy because I'm not wearing safety glasses and I get paranoid. Whenever I walk around corners in places like that, I cover my eyes from imaginary sparks and arc flash. Also, I tend to hover my hand over the pieces of steel to make sure they're not hot. Story 75. Engineer, I can't stand having crappy incomplete tools. I feel compelled to document random stuff in Excel sheets. My car's tire pressure over time? Sure. Long-term fuel economy? You bet. Airplane turbulence? Of course. Story 76. Sometimes without thinking about it, I will rip the receipt from the printer while I'm at checkout line and for a brief moment try to hand it to the cashier. Story 77. I'm a project manager estimator for a mechanical contractor. If I walk into a building or parking garage where you can see the pipe or ductwork, I will look up and observe it. I'll notice goofy stuff that the installers did and notice where they did certain things for code or design reasons. Story 78. I'm sorry I'm not cleared for that. I work for the government and I'm lazy. It spills over into the real world from time to time. Story 79. Clicking my tongue at people when I want them to move and saying, whoa, when I need to slow my truck down quick. Story 80. I understand why you think that is the correct way, but I thought we'd get a better outcome if we tried it this way. To my wife, Mr. Manager. Story 81. I'm a bartender, and I am constantly smelling things. Did this shaker have booze in it? Which jigger did I just use? Are the juices going bad? I catch myself picking up objects outside of work and smelling them. Half the time, I don't even realize what I'm doing. Story 82. I worked in banking, so my money in my wallet is arranged right side up, face, front, side, all facing the same way in increasing denominations, low bills together in front, graduating higher and back. Story 83. Personal protective equipment, PPE, at home. After wearing full PPE at work and getting safety moments, tailgate meetings, and safety orientations all the time, it feels weird not to wear PPE for many household, garage, and yard work tasks. Floor warden at work. I constantly notice that 95 of retail stores don't do their monthly fire extinguisher inspections. Story 84. Nested parentheses while writing notes, writing emails, writing anything that isn't code. Ending sentences with, there are more. Story 85. I assemble medical devices and have grown a very keen eye. When my boyfriend rented a car, the clerk had him go over the vehicle to look for damage. He didn't find anything, but I did. Today actually was fun. By noticing the tiniest pink dot in my Big Mac container, I was able to tell it was raw before I even bit into it. It's like having a weird superpower. I tend to go over everything anymore with a fine-tooth comb and can notice the slightest differences on shoot. Story 86. Environment scientist. I notice erosion and the effects of vegetation removal at any waterway I visit. Story 87. I work at a little tea cake shop. Nothing too fancy, but we try to present well, part of which is pouring presentation and plating. At home, I've started plating my food well and pouring drinks from unnecessary heights, even when I'm all alone. Story 88. I did technical theater in HS. Not like little Christmas plays. I mean like 25,000 set productions and state-level competitions. I perfected walking silently, despite being a 6-foot-tall, 150-ops guy. Never seen, never heard. I have to consciously make a noise when I'm walking around so I don't scare the daylights out of my grandmother or something. Story 89. I'm an instructional designer, and it's ridiculous how much people in higher ed, instructors no less, plagiarize content and try pass it off shamelessly as original work. Needless to say, I've actually gotten in the habit of citing my social media posts and making sure that I give credit when applicable. Consequently, I avoid political and religious posts like the plague now. Story 90. At Tech. Always good clean cable management. Computers, server racks, everything. Nice and neat and tidy, so it's easy to identify what runs where. Pretty much all of RPC Master Race can agree with me on this. Story 91. I am an air traffic controller. I get awkward looks in public when I use words like Wilco and Roger, or when I respond to a question with negative or affirmative. I also regularly use Niner. Story 92. Cursing like you can't imagine. Eating as fast as I can, like a starving dog. Pissing on my middle finger and thumb every time I go to the bathroom because the creeping of frostbite is always in the back of my head. Story 93. I'm fixing musical instruments for a living, so whenever I'm watching a movie or TV show and there is something with a band or orchestra, I always look to see what brand instrument they are using and whether it is put together correctly. Most times it isn't. Also, strangely, I get pissed off when someone brings in an instrument with a Shure DIY Fox from home, yet I insist on fixing all my crap myself. Story 94. Correctional officer. If I hear a PA system beep, I think it's the one from work, and I tense up because I think they are going to call for staff response to an assault or fight. When someone asks for a pen outside of work, I still reach for my shirt pocket, where I keep my pen at work. If I hear a quick beep while leaning back, sitting back, laying, I sit upright. This is because I think it is my emergency button. It is located on my shoulder and will beep if leaned, as this also will trigger it after a few seconds. Other smaller things are, always sit in a restaurant with my back to the wall, so I have a clear line of sight. Count how many people are in a room. Swear a lot more than I used to. Story 95. College student, vigorously clicking Ctrl+S every 3 minutes while on MS Word, so I don't lose anything. Story 96. I do some watch valuation as part of my job, and now I constantly creep on strangers' watches in public. I see the bracelet or something, and I just have to know what it is. Also forget that 5 to 6 figure watches aren't a normal conversation topic outside of work. Oops. Story 97. I work in a psych hospital and live in a big city. I always have an uncomfortable moment when shaking hands. We don't shake hands at the hospital, and I have been pulled in while shaking a patient's hand. I always want to make eye contact with everyone. At the hospital, when I walk onto a unit or room, I make sure to look at everyone and make sure that as many of them as I can and are seeing me see them. This is not a great thing to do in Chicago, though it's always gone well. Way more likely to start arguing with someone. I worked on this one because I didn't like it. Hospital work made me really assertive and able to just talk mad shoot for long periods. I talk a lot more and even ramble at times because I'm constantly running groups, so I get used to giving drawn-out explanations of stuff. Also worked on this one, but it sneaks in easily enough when I'm nervous or tipsy. Story 98. I spend most of my days editing commercials, so I started randomly clicking my mouse while watching YouTube Netflix to make my coworkers think I was working. But now it's become a thing I do all the time. Story 99. I'm a firefighter. Anytime I was through a building, I'm mapping it in my head so I can get back out in total darkness. Ask, I always know where emergency exits are. Also, I always read the escape plan at hotels. Call me paranoid, but damn it, sometimes people die for not knowing simple things like that. Story 100. I design and install landscapes and sell real estate and spend 80 of my time in public scoping out every piece of property I walk onto, looking for ways to increase property value or raise appeal to drive more foot traffic. Story 101. After nearly a decade of retail, I frequently carry my own pen around. I have yet to experience a workplace that isn't filled with pen thieves. Story 102. Disney cast member. Forever using the Disney point. Using 2 fingers to point instead of 1. Never 1. It really works in traffic when you want to tell someone you're letting them in. I also talk to random people's children in public. I get away with it better than my male coworkers. Absent-mindedly wish people a happy birthday, anniversary when I'm just playing in the parks, and automatically turn around or stop what I'm doing when someone says, "Excuse me." I have also used my "don't fudge with me" youth's voice to tell jerk kids to stop running, get off the walls, stop skipping in lines while not working, of which I have no regrets. Ain't nobody got time for cracked heads or fools on your day off. Story 103. Helping people learn to us and helping my friends get ready for their fights has made it so that I look at people's bodies as opposed to their eyes. In sparring, you don't want to look at people's eyes, you want to focus more on their bodies. This is making my conversations with others weird now. Story 104. I was a bouncer for 15 years, and there's a stance I learned from the guy who taught me. It looks casual enough, but I've got one hand where I can easily defend against an upper body head strike, another in where I can defend the groin rather easily. I always stand like this, no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing. Story 105. Worked at a children's museum for a while once. Had to start forming the habit of looking around me before cursing or scolding others who curse in front of children. Also saying friends instead of guys because apparently we had a PC principal of a director who explained that it's gender biased and excludes girls somehow. Story 106. When I first left the Air Force and got a civilian job, I had to fight the urge to salute my manager. Got my hand more than halfway up a couple of times. Learned to quickly segue into an ear scratch or a chin rub. Story 107. That one's a rental car. That one too. That one over there too. Cool party trick, just the one time. Story 108. Math. When talking about basic geometric shapes, I sometimes say what dimension I'm talking about it without even thinking about it. For example, instead of simply saying a sphere, I'll say a 3-dimensional sphere. Because if I say a sphere, the layperson will be picturing an n-dimensional sphere. Also, I'll call a circle a 2-dimensional sphere and a square a 2-dimensional cube. Story 109. I've become way too open about bodily functions. I work with toddlers and infants and spend too much time discussing poop and the color consistency, etc. It doesn't even bother me to talk about these things anymore, which is unfortunate when I want to relate a funny but gross story to my much more squeamish friends who get horrified when I even mention the word poop. Story 110. I am now a king at discarding my own beliefs in order to de-escalate an angry friend. It's not so much that I'm being fake, it's that I am willing to silence my personal opinions in order to comfort friends in the moment and only vocalize my thoughts or criticism when they are in a calmer mindset. Work at a school. Story 111. I work in retail and I have started judging other stores' customer service. Never used to do it, LOL. Story 112. I worked at a store where we primarily sold popcorn, and I absolutely dislike it. Now I feel a deep rage whenever I see popcorn. I want to yell and destroy whatever it is that's showing me popcorn. Story 113. I used to work in a fast food restaurant when I was younger and started having a Spanish accent and speaking broken English, even though I could speak perfect English. Story 114. I work at a stationery store. If you hand me your business card, I will immediately judge the quality of your paper. Story 115. I'm a doctor. Anytime I see someone with prominent veins in their hands or arms, I can't help but think how easy it would be to draw their blood or start an IV in them. Close family and friends have caught me staring at their arms from time to time. One time, my teenage nephew asked me what I was looking at. I said something to the effect of his veins were so big, I could use a garden hose to start an IV. He just gave me a blank stare and said nothing as he slowly put on his jacket to cover his arms. Story 116. Haven't done it in a long time, but driving a forklift a lot will make you use your wiper controls to try to go into driver reverse on your personal vehicle, especially when you're tired after a long day. Story 117. I repeat customer service lines. Have a great day, and tend to be super cheerful when I'm in a store. One time I was in Target on my break, and a lady mistook me for an employee there while I was wearing a blue, not red shirt, and I was in customer service mode. So I absent-mindedly spent my 15 helping a random Target customer. We realized at the exact same time that I obviously did not, in fact, work at Target. Story 118. Grad student, do lots of work in fume hoods. I do the wide leg power stance to adjust my height to make working in the hood more comfortable, don't have to lean over, but I now do this all the time when I'm standing at any counter or table, most often when I'm doing the dishes. It's really quite comfortable, but looks a little weird. Story 119. I work with kids, and kids, especially around 4 to 6 years old, always get really excited to say hi to you. So I respond in kind, a wave back really enthusiastically. As a dude in his mid-20s, it gets a little weird when I accidentally greet other adults by waving both hands really big with my fingers spread wide open and my arms outstretched. Story 120. Tech support, a fear of making it crowd references. Now, when someone complains about something not working, if I flippantly throw out, "Have you tried turning it off and on again?" they think I'm volunteering to fix it. Story 121. When someone expresses a strong emotion, I become very flat and analytical. It's what happens after years working with psych patients. Story 122. So I work in a gas station, and we have to greet everybody who comes inside. It's not like a script, just hello or good morning. I got kind of sort of scolded once when I didn't say it loud enough, since I'm fairly quiet to begin with, so I made it a habit to say hi loudly. Basically, sometimes I'm in autopilot and take it too far. Customer walks out of the bathroom, hi, from the registers. Customer walks out of beer cooler, hi. Customer walks close enough to the door to set a motion sensing beeper, hi, to a customer I already greeted. This is all after the initial hi as they come in. Then I've hide people in my car, LOL. Somebody pulls up at a four-way, hi, totally on autopilot. Story 123. I target veins. In any scene in a movie, an actor's veins stand out to me, whether it's a romance scene, action fight scene, whatever. At the dinner table at the in-laws, I notice how I would gain access to each person's blood the fastest, as if each person in the room collapsed right at the same moment and I had to insert an IV into each person right now. What order would I do and what vein would I select to get each done the fastest? I'm an ED nurse. Story 124. I work at a grocery store as a cashier, so whenever anybody says a name of a fruit or vegetable, I always think of the PLU number. So if someone mentions a zucchini, I'll instantly think 4067. Oh, bananas, 4011. It's scary sometimes. Cantaloupe, 4050. Story 125. Janitor, I've grown a general distaste for everyone else's bathroom habits, and I have a constant need to wear gloves. Story 126. Thanks to 15 years of military service, I can literally shoot anywhere, anytime, no matter what is going on around me. I was a shy pooer back in the day, not anymore. Story 127. I have a good one. We use forklifts. I'm our shop, and when we're going around blind corners, entrances, and really whenever it seems beneficial, it's required suggested to beep the horn a couple times. After working there for over a year now, there's been a few times I'll be backing up my car or whatever, and will instinctively beep my horn. Story 128. I work at a sleepaway summer camp and teach badges at the waterfront to children ages 10-17. I now repeat commands or short explanations twice, as I need to do that to catch the kids' attention and make sure they understand the direction information. Story 129. Journalist. I sometimes realize I'm interviewing people in casual conversations. I will ask you so many questions. I also mentally copy edit every piece of text I see. Story 130. Sailor here. Always have to remind myself that it's okay to lean something, like a ladder, against a wall without tying it down. Story 131. Former cable guy. When I'm outside a friend's house, I'll find myself analyzing the drop's path and installation. Holy Christ. It's never good enough. It help desk. I'm the family friend IT guy. When I'm talking to someone about the problem, I'll rattle off the standard triage questions without thinking. Usually good info, but my mom gets confused when I ask her if other people are having the same issue. Story 132. Always use the NATO phonetic alphabet when giving a letter over the phone or other comms. I appreciate dickheads do this to try and appear cool, but there is actually a reason these letters are used precisely to avoid ambiguity and confusion. Instead of A as in apple, it's easier if everyone recognizes alpha. Story 133. I work in a lab, so 1, I wash my hands a lot, and I'm very conscious of when I touch my face and what I touched prior. 2. I wear nitrile gloves when I clean or work on my car. 3. I'm very safety conscious and always notice sharp edges, trip hazards, and poor ergonomics. 4. I always read the labels on all food, medicine, hygiene, and cleaning products. These are good habits that I'm happy to take home, but seeing much of the rest of the world completely ignore them makes me feel overly neurotic at times. I constantly get called germaphobe, mostly by friends who are parents that are elbow deep in kid goo. Story 134. I work in a vape shop that specializes in custom-made to-order flavoring, and I have developed this sense of smell and taste that can break down what is in something. If a drink says it has 3 or 4 different things in it, I can taste it and smell it and tell you if it really doesn't has extra things in it. Story 135. I stocked groceries years ago, bringing all products to the front of the shelf so everything looks straight and perfect was a big part of my job. Now whenever I pull something off the shelf in a store, I will pull up the next one to the front, so I'm not ruining someone else's hard work. Story 136. When I'm in favor of something but want additional opinions, I say 1. When I approve of something and expect it to happen, I say 2. I am doing way too many code reviews, and saying these things confuses my family immensely. Story 137. Working in architecture, I have to switch between drawing on the computer and drawing in real life a good bit. If I've been doing CAD for too long and switch back over to my pencils, I'll reach with my left hand to Ctrl-Z if I screw up sketching something. Story 138. I have said my pleasure for the last 4 years of my life and can't stop. I quit Chick-fil-A over 12 years ago. Story 139. Software development turned me from the homecoming king of high school with in-depth social knowledge and finely tuned personal skills into a basement-dwelling, programming, dateless, book reading, antisocial, internet arguing, neckbeard adult. Quite a few bad habits for a social animal. TLDR. If you want to stay cool, drop out of programming school. Story 140. I time medicine doses to the hour and only take the amount indicated. No more NyQuil swigs from the bottle. I will not drink any adult beverage while any medicine is on board. If I take something, I tell at least 2 people in case EMS has to revive me. They'll know I took a couple Benadryl. It's ridiculous. I am an autopsy assistant. Story 141. As a nurse, we have to wash hands, use hand sanitizer before we see every patient. After we see them, and most healthcare places have hand sanitizer dispensers everywhere. I now have a problem where I can't walk by hand sanitizer without have the urge to use some even when I am not at work or even if I just wash my hands. Story 142. As an auto detailer, I have a hard time getting in people's dirty cars. Is that really a broken, leaking ketchup packet in your cup holder? Really? Story 143. I have a habit of knocking on doors that swing away from me. Comes from living on a ship with tight spaces where someone could get hit by it on the other side. Story 144. From a bookstore job, I compulsively fix books on bookstore shelves while shopping. From a factory job, no matter where I am, I constantly look for tripping hazards and correct any I find. Story 145. Programmer here. I figured out how McD's IT system works and then planned out how they work out their distribution and food money tracking while I was there with the GF one time. It was a long line. I don't normally do this. Story 146. Oh man, I have so many of these. I'm a stagehand, so every time I coil a cable, it needs to be over. Just the way you've had to do it with the companies I've worked with. I never do the around the arm coil either. Cable placement is super important to me also. If it doesn't lay flat, I need to fix it. And the worst part is, I no longer enjoy going to converts because I'm too busy staring at lights and critiquing the audio mix. Story 147. As a result of working in a restaurant, I have a bad habit of eating standing up and eating very quickly. It has become a hard habit to break. Story 148. I'm a dancer, and it's illegal to take photos of us at work. We learn to watch for phones pointed straight at us. I do that now in my personal life. If a phone camera is pointed straight at me, I get really uncomfortable, even though I know that they're probably not taking photos. Just paranoid. Story 149. I've said perfect a lot more. We're supposed to say my pleasure instead of you're welcome whenever we address guests, but that never caught on with me. Nothing huge. Story 150. As a server, I leave that last bit of paper on the tip of the straw for the customer. Whenever I am putting a straw in my own drink, I leave that piece on, like I'm not the one who is going to drink it. Story 151. I work in retail. So when a customer hands me something, I usually say thank you. A few months ago, a police officer handed me a speeding ticket, and I thanked him. Story 152. Laughing, joking at cancer. Self-dislike jokes. Insulting people who you respect and respect you back. Clean everything meticulously. Get mad at civilians for being ignorant to secret information. Swear a lot. Story 153. I work in a warehouse. Whenever we are on any of the machinery, we have to stop at stop signs in intersections and honk. We use the horns like the echolocation bats use. On the way home, I've honked my horn at stop signs out of habit. This is followed by me waving at the other drivers, profusely apologizing like they can hear me. Also, on sit-down forklifts, reverse and drive are controlled by a lever on the side of the steering wheel. I occasionally flash my high beams when I'm trying to back out of a parking space. Story 154. Always say behind when I walk behind my wife when we're in the house, or shopping, or pretty much everywhere. Story 155. I'm a college student, and since high school, I've worked in 4 different grocery stores. I catch myself facing shelves too deep when I'm shopping and not at work. The weird looks from employees are almost worth the embarrassment, though. Story 156. I used to install security cameras. I fell into the habit of telling random businesses about coverage gaps in their installations. Turns out that just scares the hell out of people. Story 157. When I was flying helicopters in the Navy, my wife and I got into the habit of always saying I love you before saying goodbye on the phone because we never knew if that might be the last time we spoke. Pilot air crewman, 3rd most dangerous job in America. Look it up. Story 158. Financial aid. I read everything in its entirety. You have to be aware of what you sign your name to. Story 159. This will probably get buried, but the following. Pointing with 2 fingers. The urge to pick up litter if visible. Calling anyone dressed up in a costume by their character's name and treating them as said character. I work at Disney. Story 160. Oh my God, I've worked in technical support and customer service. I can't have a normal conversation anymore. Anytime a friend opens up to me, I go into script mode. I have legitimately said, "I'm sorry you feel that way, sir," to a friend who I've known for half my life when he told me about some personal problem he was having. I can't get out of be nice all the time mode, even when I'm pissed off. It's been beaten into me over time to always be polite and courteous even when someone is screaming at you, and I'm totally incapable of just screaming back now. Maybe it's for the better, but I honestly feel like my work has shaped me into a meek person. Story 161. I make books for a living, and now whenever I pick up a book, I look for identifying markers to see if it was a book we made. Story 162. I freely touch the underside of discs because I know that's not going to fudge scratch them. You have to have shoot discs or nails for nails if you scratch the underside while handling it. I work at a video store. Story 163. Working in construction as an electrician, I realize how the job is asked of you to be 100 correct every time, which is a good thing, but then it spills over into everyday life. With you can't shoot problems in life with friends, family, etc. like you can in building construction. Story 164. I used to have a job which involved helping groups of customers in and out of lifts, elevators. I still occasionally catch myself, years later, going to hold the doors and thank people as they walk in or out. Story 165. I say sir and ma'am to refer to people I don't know. Lots of thank yous. Feel compelled to wear gloves to take out rubbish, stack and clean my own dishes, or clean my own cuts. Use iodine at home too. Want to eat cereal out of a mug. Read all people's badgicides and identifiers on their uniforms. Knife hand or 2 finger point. Use phonetic alphabet. Always aware of aircraft exits, distance to them, cabin clearance protocols, etc. Paying attention to sounds in the cabin. Story 166. Trace element chemistry. I leave screw bottle caps, seal side down, to keep them clean rather than how I used to. This is because falling particles in the air may contaminate my samples, and the only bit that touches solution is up inside the lid. Anything the cap skirt picks up off a table will never come in contact the liquid in your bottle, as it just sits over the neck outside. Story 167. I develop medical devices and often stand around with surgeons in labs or operating rooms where they stand with their arms bent up so they're in the sterile field, like this or this. Especially at a lab when I've been helping and had my hands in a cadaver, I find that I mirror them unconsciously. I've noticed when my hands are dirty, like from preparing raw chicken or something, I'll stand in the kitchen like I'm in the OR until I can wash my hands. Story 168. Mechanic here. I often catch myself talking to inanimate objects since I often ask nuts and bolts who they are and where they go. Story 169. I work in retail, and I've picked up this really strange habit of putting the fudge shirt back where it came from when I'm done with it for fudge's sake. Story 170. During college, I worked for Starbucks, where we were trained to say thank you after every interaction. When handing a drink off, when finishing a registered transaction, it was the equivalent of a Starbucks goodbye. I never paid any attention to the meaning of this gesture until after I had graduated and left Starbucks. Years later, I noticed that I kept doing all of these thank yous, and it was a really great communication trait. I know that it is small and very American, but I like it now. I am grateful for most of the interactions I have, and an under-the-radar, seemingly casual thank you is a nice, subtle way for me to honestly express my gratitude. I really am thankful. That's the funny thing. To this day, I always say thank you after small interactions. Are you serving me something? Thank you. Are you updating me on work-related projects? Thank you. Are you giving me some constructive criticism? Thank you. I love it. I think it's a lovely, polite micro behavior. It truly has helped me be a nicer person and interact positively with everyone I meet. Story 171. Noticing the alarm provider for every building I walk into. You would be surprised how many small businesses use 20th century alarm sensors. Story 172. I usually take a tool like a hammer, hit something with it lightly a couple times, then yell, "Ops check." Story 173. Am always paying attention to those around me. Have worked security for years. If something happens, I most likely can give you a top-to-bottom description of all the people around me. If your body language seems off, or you seem to focus on something you shouldn't be, I'll be watching you. Always let employees know when someone is about to steal something. Oh, and I can spot the undercover or loss prevention guy from a mile away. They get all spooked when I ask them where a product is without thinking about it. I think I've been doing this too long. Story 174. I helped out a friend's rock band, setting up gear, working lights, and basically getting them anything. I can move through a large crowd like it's not even there. Story 175. I work in insurance. When I watch movies where there's explosions, car crashes, or buildings are destroyed, I always think about how much the insurance claim is going to be and how pissed off the carrier will be to have to pay it. Story 176. As an archaeological field technician in cultural resource management, CRM, I survey lands slated for development for prehistoric and historic artifacts and sites. This involves a lot of digging, but also a lot of ground surface survey. Anytime I walk over grass, across a soccer field, someone's front yard, those grassy medians separating the mall from the Five Guys, my mind goes into work mode, and I'm scouring the ground for artifacts. Doesn't take long for me to realize I'm just looking at a bunch of modern litter. Story 177. Late to the party, when I was working as a grocery store bagger, I was helping my mom set the dinner table. And instead of asking if we needed forks and knives, I said paper or plastic. Story 178. While I'm in a store and someone speaks over the intercom, I immediately stop talking and will tell others to do the same until the announcement is over. If curious, I am active duty Navy. Story 179. Grounding myself on objects to get rid of static. I work in PC world, so get shocked on nearly everything I touch. It's funny for the customers, though. Story 180. Don't know if this'll get it read down here, but I'm a dump truck operator, and the other machines use horn signals for everything. Beep, you're loaded, beep, tip it there. Beep, 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 move forward. Ugh, stop there. I once got my license suspended, so all I drove for 3 months was my truck. And when I could drive my car again, I nearly slammed the brakes on at a big intersection when someone blasted their horn. Story 181. I've worked at cash registers a handful of times, so anytime I have multiple dollar bills, I'll make sure they're all facing the same direction. Story 182. After 10 years on active duty, I am always taking my hat off when walking into a building. The habit is so strong that on my days off when out of uniform, I'll take my hat off walking into a Target or something, then quickly put it right back on and hope no one noticed. Also, walking with items always in my left hand so I can salute. Story 183. Every time I'm on a date, when I open the door for my date, and as she's stepping inside my car, I push her head down a little and say, "Watch your head, Tifu." Story 184. I always discreetly visually examine people's outfits for potentially concealed weapons. It is probably a big reason I'm always asking myself what their name was 3 seconds after they tell me. Story 185. I am a digital marketer. I constantly scan for errors on websites automatically. It happens heaps when I am planning to travel because many hotels have errors. Here is my process booking an overseas holiday. So, this hotel in Hawaii looks nice. Me, Yeah, but their H1s are all wrong. Where's the lead capture form? Do they even want me to book? Surely their CRO is bad. Hang on, let me check if they rank for hotels in Hawaii. Nope. How can a prestigious hotel have such a shoot website? So, yeah, but it's right on the beach. Me. Oh, great. Now I am automatically downloading their menu. What kind of UX is this? SO. Ooh, there's prawn dumplings. Me. So their contact info page is buried in a footer link. And because the website isn't mobile optimized, I'm finding it middly difficult to click on SO. What's a footer link? I love it when you talk Google. Me. I'm not even talking goo. Yes, you can take off my pants. That's pretty much the life of a digital marketer. Story 186. I've worked in loud factories, and to get someone's attention, people let out a loud, woo! I do this outside of work all the time to get someone's attention. It's quite embarrassing. Story 187. I'm a restaurant manager walking behind someone, behind. Can you grab me the baby's pacifier? Heard or echo, wife. Story 188. I worked retail my whole life, which isn't much, I'm only 2021, but I've built a habit of walking really fast. Also organizing from sizes and types. When I go to stores, I tend to fold back the things I pick up because in my head, I feel their pain. But then again, they need something to work on since it's their job. Still fudge that. Story 189. I'm a real estate investor. I buy houses and rehab them. So when someone invites me over and gives me a tour of their house, I'm mentally compiling a list of things that need to be rehabbed. I've learned not to list them out loud because people don't want to know what's wrong with their house. Or they already know and don't need someone pointing those things out. Story 190. Night shift at IT support. I talk with a lot of people in India. They quite frequently use the phrase, do the needful. I'm not a fan of it, but it's so convenient a saying that I have to stop myself from using it in conversation or email. Story 191. I stopped working in retail 3 years ago, still folding clothes whenever I go clothing shopping, or hanging stuff in size order. Story 192. Retail. I always refold t-shirts neatly at other stores while looking at their merchandise. It just became second nature to do at my own store that I don't even think about it while doing it. Story 193. I work in financial compliance and regularly have to assess client activity and profiles for anti-money laundering purposes. If my personal banking transactions are going a bit weird, I always wonder what my bank thinks of me. Also, when I meet people that are from a high-risk jurisdiction, such as Nigeria or Ukraine, I always wonder if it was hell for them to get a bank account here in the UK. Sigh. Story 194. I have a hard time sitting down for long periods of time now without getting antsy, since all I have to do on my feet. Story 195. I worked 9 years in the children's section of a library. I have a very effective teacher's voice. Every time I see a misbehaving kid in public or my niece, my angry teacher voice comes out. We do not hit, or there is no running, with both stern and disapproving tones. Story 196. I write erotica and skip the intimacy scenes in novels because they A, remind me of work, and B, are totally boring compared to what I'm used to. Story 197. Former law enforcement officer here. Find myself having index finger on the side when I'm holding a spray bottle. Story 198. Stage crew engineer. Coiling anything that can be coiled neatly. Edit. I lied. I still haven't gotten the knack, so I can only try to coil it neatly. Story 199. I work in a pub, and one time I was in another pub and found myself taking my glass and walking around the bar to put it in the glass wash. Embarrassing. Story 200. While trying to build my flight time in a Cessna 172, I was logging about 8 to 10 hours a day, every day. I was so in the zone that one day I pulled into the parking lot and noticed a leaf blow by the driver's side door. My actual thought was, oh good, at least I'm parked into the wind, which is exactly what you're supposed to do in an airplane. Story 201. Cursing. I've worked in automotive assembly shops for a few years now. Wow, does everyone curse like sailors? Story 202. Used to work in aviation. I'm always subconsciously checking that I have all the items I regularly carry on me to make sure I haven't lost any of them. I'll drag my fingertips across my left wrist to make sure my watch is still there, then tap the right pocket of my slacks, feeling for the lump to let me know I still have my car keys, then the back pocket to make sure my wallet is there. I usually don't even realize I'm doing it until someone asks why I keep constantly checking every few minutes, and if I'm really that paranoid about being pickpocketed. Edit. To clarify for those that aren't familiar with aviation, Having a stray bolt left in an intake where it could get sucked through an engine, or a misplaced wrench getting lodged in a flight control channel could be really bad for an aircraft. So when you go out to the flight line to perform maintenance, you take a careful inventory of everything you take with you, check periodically while working, and take a careful inventory when you come back to the shop to make sure everything is accounted for and you didn't leave anything where it shouldn't be. You spend so much time checking that you still have all your stuff that it quickly becomes second nature and you start doing it subconsciously even when you aren't on the flight line. Story 203. Software tester. Every program or game I get, I want to push the limits. Character name, Timmy. Drop table players. Age, banana. Email, let's see if you accept Mailinator. Username, Story 204. As a mechanic, I always wash my hands before the bathroom and have at least one of the two front windows down of any car, no matter the time of the year. Story 205. I've worked in printing my whole life running presses. We cannot stop the machines for breaks or lunch, so we eat standing and walking around. At home, I eat supper standing at the counter in the kitchen because to sit and eat feels weird to me now. I get a ration of hell every time there's a family gathering and we have to all sit around the big table and eat because I'm standing in the kitchen. Story 206. I am a fight choreographer, and the habits you pick up are completely contradictory to good self-defense practices. 1, I wait for a punch to hit me instead of reacting to it. 2, I make sure that when making an attack, I telegraph the movement exaggeratedly so untrained actors can respond to it. 3, my automatic defense stance has clear openings that look good on camera and make one look more vulnerable. Worst of all, sometimes when I train a martial art at a new place, after I get hurt a little during sparring, my first instinct is to hold the place that I was hit at and exaggerate the pain for the audience. Basically, this kind of exaggeration should start at 4:15. Story 207. I work for the government. I often catch myself giving vague promises and never keeping them in regards to work. Story 208. I used to work in a grocery store as a bagger and cashier. Now, whenever I check out, I load the belt in groups so that all the items coming down can go into bags together. Breads and eggs together, frozen and frozen together, boxes together makes things easier. Story 209. I work at an orphanage in Guatemala where affection is all part of the job. When visiting home in the United States, I will suddenly find myself patting the head of the child in front of me in the grocery store line. Story 210. I try to open doors with my wallet. Apparently, the rest of the world is not set up to recognize my access card. Story 211. I teach English Comp and other classes in a community college. I have been teaching English classes on the community college level for many, many years. Since I teach English classes to community college students, I tend to say the same thing several different ways when I talk with friends or family. So I have a habit now of saying the same thing several times in different ways since I teach college classes, like I am wanting to make sure I got the information across. It happens now whenever I talk with anyone. It is a habit I got from being a community college English teacher. Story 212. Software developer randomly hitting Charles when I do something close a Reddit tab controls. Wait, what? Oh, ops. Finish making a sandwich controls. There wasn't even a keyboard? That's it for this video. Don't forget to support Vancher and my second channel, Vanchus. See you soon.